The tournament was in full swing, the crowd buzzing with excitement. Young fighters from across the region had gathered to showcase their skills, but no one expected what was about to happen. Among them was a red belt fighter, known for his aggressive style and reputation for winning at any cost. On the other side of the mat was a young girl, calm, focused, and determined, but far less experienced than her opponent. The match began like any other, with polite bows and the referee giving the signals. But within seconds, the red belt fighter's aggression became apparent. Instead of following the rules and showing respect, he launched a series of harsh, uncontrolled strikes aimed directly at the girl. The crowd gasped as she tried to defend herself, stumbling backward under the force of his attacks. Every punch and kick seemed more reckless than the last, and it quickly became clear that this wasn't a fair fight. Spectators started shouting, some demanding the referee step in. Yet the red belt fighter ignored the warnings, focused solely on overwhelming his opponent. The young girl, though frightened, tried to maintain her composure. She moved defensively, but her smaller size and limited experience made it nearly impossible to counter such relentless attacks. Whispers spread through the crowd. Isn't this going too far? And someone who should stop him. The atmosphere grew tense, the excitement of the tournament replaced by fear and concern. Cameras from the audience captured every moment, recording the shocking behavior of the red belt fighter. It was clear that someone needed to intervene before things escalated further. The girl's family, sitting at the edge of the mat, clutched each other in worry, unable to watch helplessly as the situation unfolded. And then, a shift in energy occurred. From the sidelines, a figure entered the arena, calm, confident, and commanding attention without saying a word. He walked toward the chaos. The crowd immediately sensed something was about to change. This was Steven Seagal, a martial arts master whose reputation for skill, composure, and justice preceded him. What happened next shocked everyone in the arena, and changed the fight forever. The arena was still buzzing with nervous energy. Spectators whispered among themselves, unable to look away from the shocking scene unfolding on the mat. The red belt fighter, fueled by arrogance and aggression, continued his relentless assault on the young girl. His movements were harsh, uncontrolled, and intimidating. Each strike meant to overpower rather than compete fairly. Despite the growing danger, the girl stood her ground as best as she could, attempting to block and counter. But her inexperience made it almost impossible. Every aggressive kick and punch pushed her closer to the edge of the mat. Some members of the audience started shouting at the referee, urging him to intervene, while others shouted encouragement to the girl. The tension was palpable. Meanwhile, Steven Seagal moved calmly through the sidelines, his eyes locked on the unfolding situation. He didn't rush, didn't panic. His presence alone seemed to command attention, drawing curious glances from the crowd. The red belt fighter, unaware of who had entered, continued his unchecked attack, determined to finish the match his way. Phones rose everywhere in the audience, capturing every second. The crowd was divided, some cheering for the girl's brave defense, others stunned at the sheer recklessness of the red belt fighter. Murmurs spread rapidly. Is he really going to stop? And someone do something? Families held their children close, and social media notifications began lighting up as clips of the chaotic match were shared online. The young girl's family grew visibly anxious. Her parents and siblings whispered frantically, urging her to stay safe, begging her to step aside. But she refused to give up, inspired by her own courage and the sudden energy shift brought by Seagal's presence. Everyone could feel the tension build, not just between the fighters, but across the entire arena. If you're watching this right now, tell us in the comments. What country and city are you watching from? The red belt fighter finally noticed Seagal moving closer. For the first time, a hint of hesitation flickered across his face. He wasn't expecting anyone of authority, or anyone with such mastery, to enter the arena. But he quickly shook it off, convinced he could finish the girl before anyone interfered. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation, sensing that the moment of truth was approaching. Even as the red belt fighter continued his reckless attacks, Seagal's calm, focused energy seemed to protect the young girl in a way that was almost invisible. His eyes tracked the fighter's every movement, ready to intervene at the precise moment needed. The arena was silent, hanging on the edge of suspense. Spectators whispered to each other, wondering, is he going to step in? How will this end? The tension had reached a breaking point. The red belt fighter's arrogance, the girl's determination, the audience's anxiety, and Seagal's looming presence combined to create a moment that none of the spectators, or anyone watching online, would ever forget. The tension in the arena had reached a breaking point. The red belt fighter, fueled by pride and aggression, was relentless. Every strike he threw carried more force than the last, and it became painfully clear that the young girl standing across from him was no match for his brute strength. Sweat dripped from her brow, her legs shook from exertion, and yet she refused to fall. She blocked as best as she could, her determination shining through the fear in her eyes. The crowd was silent, holding their breath with every strike. Families, friends, and spectators around the mat were visibly anxious. The girl's parents clenched their fists, whispering urgently for her to step aside, to protect herself. "Please, just leave it," her mother pleaded under her breath. Her siblings sat frozen, hearts pounding, unable to watch but unwilling to look away. Everyone sensed that this was no ordinary match. It had become dangerous, unfair, and increasingly frightening. The red belt fighter smirked, misinterpreting the girl's focus as weakness. His arrogance was on full display as he continued to press his advantage. The referee's attempts to intervene were ignored. "Step back," he shouted. But the fighter barely registered the command. His attention was entirely on overpowering his opponent. The audience's whispers grew louder, tension thickening like a storm cloud hanging over the arena. Then from the sidelines a calm energy approached. Steven Seagal moved deliberately, each step purposeful and measured. The crowd immediately sensed the shift. His reputation alone commanded attention. People leaned forward, whispering to one another, "That's Steven Seagal, the martial arts master." The energy in the room began to change. Fear and frustration from the unfair fight slowly shifted into anticipation, as if everyone collectively knew something was about to happen. The red belt fighter noticed Seagal too late. For a fleeting second, doubt flickered across his face, but arrogance quickly replaced it. "Who cares?" he seemed to think. "I'll finish this match before anyone can interfere." Yet the presence of Seagal had already altered the dynamic in the arena. The girl, sensing the change in energy, found a small surge of courage. She planted her feet more firmly, standing taller, refusing to surrender. At this moment, what would you have done? Walk away and avoid trouble, or stand your ground like she did? Comment below with your choice. The red belt fighter pressed harder, throwing powerful strikes that seemed to defy logic. The girl's movements were slower now. Fatigue was taking its toll. She stumbled backward, and a collective gasp ran through the crowd. Phones were raised, capturing every brutal strike, every desperate defensive maneuver. The audience was captivated, torn between fear for the girl and awe at her resilience. Meanwhile, Seagal closed the distance calmly, each step purposeful, but non-threatening. He did not rush, did not shout, and did not react hastily. His eyes scanned the red belt fighter's movements, analyzing every punch, every kick, every imbalance. The young girl noticed his presence, a subtle confidence washing over her. The invisible support of a master watching over her gave her the courage to stay upright. The red belt fighter, sensing that someone had entered the arena, tried to intimidate Seagal with a glare and a mock bow. But Seagal's expression remained calm, composed, and unwavering. The crowd sensed the tension was now reaching its peak. Every spectator was holding their breath, watching closely, wondering what would happen if Seagal decided to intervene. Parents and children in the audience clutched one another, whispering prayers, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The girl's family could only watch helplessly, torn between fear for her safety and relief that a master had arrived. The tension wasn't just between the fighters, it had grown to include everyone in the arena. As the seconds dragged on, the atmosphere grew heavier, almost unbearable. The red belt fighter's aggression continued. The girl's determination shone through, and Steven Seagal's calm presence loomed over the scene. It was a perfect storm of fear, courage, tension, and anticipation. In that charged moment, the audience, the fighters, and even the red belt fighter himself seemed to realize something monumental was about to happen, and it would change the fight forever. The arena had gone completely silent, Save for the heavy breathing of the young girl and the faint shuffle of the red belt fighter's movements, every spectator was now keenly aware of the presence of Steven Seagal at the edge of the mat. His calm, commanding energy seemed to ripple through the crowd, drawing all attention. People were leaning forward in their seats, whispers spreading like wildfire. "Is that Steven Seagal?" The red belt fighter, still focused on the girl, had only a faint awareness of Seagal. His arrogance and self-confidence made him dismiss the possibility that anyone could truly stop him. "Who's that old guy?" he muttered to himself, narrowing his eyes. But the second he glanced up properly, even for a fleeting moment, he felt something he hadn't expected. An unshakable, quiet authority that seemed to fill the room. Meanwhile, the young girl, exhausted but determined, began to feel a renewed sense of courage. The mere presence of Seagal, someone renowned for his martial arts mastery and calm, unshakable demeanor, gave her strength. She straightened her back, held her stance, and met the red belt fighter's attacks with more control than before. Though still struggling, her confidence had subtly shifted. The audience noticed it immediately. Some clapped softly in encouragement, while others held their breath, aware that something extraordinary was unfolding. A bystander seated near the front suddenly whispered loudly, "That's Steven Seagal, the world champion, Aikido master, and actor. He's here." The words spread instantly, like a spark igniting dry tinder. Spectators turned to one another, pointing, whispering, and gasping. Cameras, previously focused on the young girl and her attacker, now swung to Seagal, capturing every calm step he took toward the center of the arena. Even as the whispers spread, the red belt fighter continued, unaware of the growing recognition around him. He swung aggressively, trying to intimidate both the girl and anyone else daring to challenge him. The crowd's attention now split. Some eyes remained on the girl, others fixed firmly on Seagal, silently waiting for him to act. The tension was suffocating, and anticipation hung in the air like an electric charge. Seagal's eyes never left the red belt fighter. His movements were deliberate, measured, and precise. Every spectator could feel that he was analyzing, calculating, and preparing, without raising his voice or making any sudden gestures. The energy shift in the arena was undeniable. The red belt fighter, for all his arrogance, had begun to sense the subtle but overwhelming presence of a true master. The girl's family, once frozen in fear, now whispered to each other in awe, "He's here to protect her. He's going to stop this." The parents' shoulders relaxed slightly, hope replacing panic, though worry remained. The audience collectively leaned forward, eyes glued to the mat, waiting to see the moment Seagal would intervene. Phones and cameras captured everything, ensuring that every second of the tension-filled scene would be immortalized. The red belt fighter, now starting to notice the murmurs and shifting attention of the crowd, paused briefly. He didn't yet realize who he was dealing with, but a seed of doubt had been planted. His strikes slowed slightly, his posture becoming less aggressive, and a flicker of uncertainty appeared in his eyes. For the first time, the audience sensed that the balance of power might be shifting. Seagal's calm composure contrasted sharply with the red belt fighter's erratic aggression. The young girl, encouraged by the silent authority of Seagal, stayed upright, her movements more confident, more controlled. Whispers in the crowd grew louder. "He's going to do something. Watch." The tension was nearly unbearable, each spectator acutely aware that the next few moments could completely change the course of the fight. Every eye in the arena was now fixed on Seagal, anticipating the inevitable confrontation. The young girl's courage, the red belt fighter's arrogance, and the silent, commanding presence of Seagal created a perfect storm of suspense and anticipation. The energy was palpable, electric, and ready to explode. The moment of truth was fast approaching. The arena seemed to hold its breath. Every spectator's eyes were glued to the mat, where the young girl still faced the relentless red belt fighter, and to the edge where Steven Seagal now stood, radiating a calm yet commanding presence. The whispers of the crowd had grown into a low hum of anticipation. Everyone knew that something monumental was about to happen. The red belt fighter, still fueled by arrogance, lunged forward with a flurry of aggressive attacks. His strikes were fast and harsh, designed to intimidate and overpower. But Seagal didn't move yet. He didn't rush. He simply observed, analyzing every motion, every angle, every potential opening. His calmness contrasted sharply with the red belt fighter's chaotic energy. The young girl, sensing Seagal's presence and the shift in energy around her, stood a little taller. She held her stance firmly, her eyes flicking to Seagal, drawing courage from his silent support. Each time the red belt fighter struck, she blocked and moved with more control, though she was still clearly exhausted. The audience watched, captivated, as tension mounted. Then Seagal finally stepped forward. His movements were deliberate, measured, and impossible to ignore. The red belt fighter turned, attempting to intimidate him, but Seagal's calm gaze held him in place. The crowd could feel the shift in power. It was subtle but undeniable. Seagal did not need to shout or gesticulate. His very presence exuded authority. Seagal's voice cut through the arena, calm yet commanding. Violence without respect is not skill. Your attacks are reckless, and your arrogance blinds you. Step back. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the red belt fighter froze. He was not used to being spoken to this way, especially not by someone who exuded such quiet authority. The crowd fell completely silent, hanging on every word. Seagal's calm tone carried weight, and it immediately shifted the dynamic of the confrontation. Instead of responding with more aggression, the red belt fighter hesitated. His confidence wavered as he realized that he was no longer controlling the situation. Seagal moved with precision now, demonstrating technique without causing unnecessary harm. Each of his movements was calculated to neutralize the fighter's attacks, creating openings that left the aggressor vulnerable yet unharmed. The audience erupted in gasps and murmurs, amazed at Seagal's mastery. The young girl, inspired by Seagal's presence and skill, found herself able to defend more effectively. She dodged, blocked, and moved with renewed confidence. It was as if Seagal's calm authority flowed into her, giving her strength when she had almost none left. The red belt fighter's arrogance began to crumble. Each failed attempt to intimidate or strike only highlighted his lack of control compared to Seagal's skill and discipline. Have you ever seen someone completely outclass their opponent? Comment yes or no below. Seagal's intervention was decisive but measured. He never aimed to humiliate or injure. Instead, he demonstrated the importance of respect, control, and humility. With each precise move, the red belt fighter became more defensive, less aggressive, and visibly frustrated. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, recognizing the skill, courage, and composure that Seagal brought to the arena. Parents and spectators alike whispered in awe. The young girl's family clutched each other, relief washing over them as they watched Seagal protect her without unnecessary force. Phones and cameras continued recording, capturing every precise move, every shift in energy, and every moment of the red belt fighter's gradual defeat. By the time the red belt fighter realized the depth of Seagal's mastery, it was too late. His confidence had been shattered. He stepped back humiliated but unharmed. As the young girl stood upright, her courage renewed, and Seagal remained calm and composed. The crowd cheered wildly, many on their feet as they witnessed not only a physical victory but also a moral one. In that moment, the arena felt electrified. The young girl had been protected, the red belt fighter humbled, and Seagal had demonstrated the true essence of martial arts. Skill tempered by discipline, strength guided by respect, and courage demonstrated through calm authority. The fight had changed entirely, all through the intervention of one man who understood that true power was not aggression. It was control, respect, and integrity. The arena had transformed into a place of suspense and awe. Every spectator, every phone recording, and every whisper was now focused entirely on Steven Seagal. The young girl had found her courage and was standing tall. The red belt fighter had been humbled. But there was still one more moment that would define the story. One final revelation that would leave the crowd in shock. As Seagal calmly maintained control of the situation, the red belt fighter began to realize that he had underestimated the man before him. Every strike he attempted was deftly countered, every aggressive move anticipated. The arrogance that had fueled his earlier attacks now flickered with doubt. For the first time, he felt vulnerable, not because of the young girl, but because of Seagal, whose presence radiated authority and mastery. A murmur ran through the audience. Someone in the front row leaned over and whispered to a fellow spectator, "Do you know who he really is? That's Steven Seagal." Within seconds, the words spread like wildfire, and the crowd erupted in amazement. Phones zoomed in, cameras panned, and every eye in the arena turned toward the martial arts legend. The red belt fighter, finally realizing the truth, froze in disbelief. His smirk had vanished, replaced by shock and a dawning recognition of his mistake. Seagal, however, remained calm and humble. He didn't gloat, shout, or humiliate the fighter. Instead, he used the moment to highlight an essential lesson: respect, discipline, and justice. "Strength is meaningless without control," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "True martial arts is about defending the helpless, not bullying the weak." The crowd erupted into cheers, some standing, some clapping wildly, as they absorbed the full impact of what had just occurred. The red belt fighter lowered his gaze, embarrassed and ashamed. He had entered the match thinking only of victory and dominance, but he now faced the consequences of his reckless actions. His earlier aggression had been neutralized, and the moral of the story had been demonstrated in front of everyone. The young girl's family rushed to the mat, their relief palpable. Tears of gratitude filled their eyes as they hugged her tightly. She had survived the ordeal, not only through her own courage but also because of Seagal's timely intervention. The crowd, witnessing this act of protection and humility, cheered louder than ever. Every camera, every smartphone had captured the exact moment when true heroism had entered the arena. Do you think the red belt fighter would have acted differently if he knew who Seagal was from the start? Comment yes or no below. Seagal addressed the crowd, his message clear and resonant: never underestimate the value of respect and discipline. True strength comes not from aggression, but from knowing when and how to act with integrity. Protect those who cannot defend themselves, and stand tall when facing injustice. His words echoed through the arena, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. As the excitement settled, the red belt fighter was escorted away by the tournament officials. The girl, though exhausted, stood proudly, her confidence restored. Spectators lingered, still discussing what they had just witnessed. Videos began circulating on social media almost instantly, capturing the transformative moment when Seagal had turned the fight around. Millions would soon witness the scene, praising his courage, skill, and unwavering sense of justice. Seagal remained calm, stepping back quietly as the arena erupted with applause. He didn't seek recognition or fame. His presence had been enough to shift the balance of power, protect the innocent, and teach a lesson about humility and respect. The red belt fighter had been humbled, the girl had been saved, and the audience had witnessed a masterclass in controlled strength and moral courage. By the end of the encounter, it was clear: this was not just a fight. It was a demonstration of integrity, skill, and the true spirit of martial arts. The crowd would remember this moment for years, and the story of Seagal's intervention would spread far beyond the arena. The moment had passed, but the story was far from over. Within minutes, spectators in the arena began sharing their videos and live streams online. Clips of Steven Seagal calmly stepping in, halting the red belt fighter, and protecting the young girl spread like wildfire. Social media erupted with praise, shock, and admiration. People from all over the world were captivated by what they had witnessed: a master stepping in at the right moment to defend the innocent while demonstrating ultimate discipline and skill. News outlets quickly picked up the footage. Headlines highlighted Seagal's intervention, emphasizing both his martial arts mastery and his moral courage. The red belt fighter's reckless behavior was condemned universally, while Seagal's calm, controlled actions became an example of how strength and integrity should coexist. The young girl became an icon of bravery, and the story inspired countless people to reflect on the importance of standing up against injustice. Comments flooded in from fans across different countries, each expressing awe at Seagal's presence and humility. "This is what real heroism looks like," one person wrote. "A true master never abuses strength," commented another. People debated what they would have done in the girl's place, and many expressed gratitude for the lesson in courage and respect. The story resonated far beyond the martial arts community. It became a symbol of standing up for what is right. No matter the circumstances, the red belt fighter faced the consequences of his actions. Tournament officials reviewed the incident, ensuring he was disqualified and banned from future competitions. It was a humbling moment for him, a clear message that aggression without discipline and respect has serious repercussions. Meanwhile, the young girl's confidence and spirit were celebrated, and she gained newfound respect from her peers and spectators alike. Seagal, ever humble, did not seek attention. He remained composed, letting the story speak for itself. His intervention had not only protected the girl but also reminded the world of the true spirit of martial arts. Skill guided by discipline, power balanced by integrity, and courage exercised with humility. Fans continued to share and discuss the incident online, and the story became a viral sensation almost overnight. If you believe no one should be judged or bullied, and that courage and integrity matter above all, type courage in the comments. Subscribe for more inspiring stories where heroes stand for justice and protect the helpless. By the end of the day, the video had gone viral across multiple platforms. Millions praised Seagal's actions, sharing the message of respect, discipline, and courage with their own communities. The story inspired parents, young athletes, and martial arts enthusiasts to think not just about skill, but about the responsibility that comes with it. The lesson was clear. Strength without respect is meaningless, and true heroes act with both courage and humility. The incident would be remembered for years, not just as a dramatic fight, but as a transformative moment. It demonstrated the power of standing up for the defenseless, the impact of calm and disciplined intervention, and the enduring influence of a master who knew that the right action at the right time could change everything. And so, the story of the red belt fighter, the brave young girl, and Steven Seagal became a symbol, a reminder that courage, respect, and integrity always leave a lasting impression.